The first time. The storm hadn't even started yet. It was late 2:13 a.m. when Amelia Reeves sat in the dark of her living room. The hum of silence so loud, it felt like her ears might bleed. The house on Sycamore Lane had always creaked, but lately, it seemed to moan like something alive. Still, that wasn't why she was awake. It was the dream again, the one where Eliza stood at the edge of the pond behind their old house, calling her mother's name, barefoot in the snow. Amelia wiped tears from her cheeks, picked up her tea, and turned toward the old TV. It sat like a toad in the far corner, humming faintly. Massive, thick-screened, with walnut veneer casing and steel knobs, the kind you'd expect to see in a fallout shelter. Not a 2025 living room. She'd bought it from a local thrift shop on impulse, something about it reminding her of her grandmother's house. It hadn't worked at first until the lightning started that night. No storm had yet come, but something stirred in the wires. A slow build of pressure in the air, like the world was holding its breath. Then, without warning, the TV flared to life, static, thick and heavy, dancing like flies. Then the outline appeared, a face, faint, child-sized. Amelia dropped her mug. It shattered across the hardwood floor, scalding her foot, but she didn't move. Her breath caught. "Eliza," she whispered. The figure leaned forward. It wasn't quite right. The face was her daughter's. Yes, but there was something else. Her eyes were too wide. Her lips didn't move, but static spilled out of the speakers, like wind over broken glass. Behind the face, darkness, shapes, flickers of things moving just out of focus, and then, a hand, thin, wet-looking. It pressed against the screen from the inside, leaving behind a long brown smear. Mud. No, not mud. Amelia screamed. Jason Reeves, her husband, found her crouched behind the sofa, shaking. She tried to explain. The static, the hand, their daughter's face. Jason, practical to a fault, chalked it up to grief and sleep deprivation. He unplugged the TV, carried Amelia to bed, and sat awake long into the night. When the rain started, the TV unplugged, turned itself back on. Jason didn't tell Amelia that he'd heard it too. When the rain started, just a whisper at first. He'd been in the kitchen, pouring himself a drink. That's when the TV flickered on. He froze. He knew he'd unplugged it. Still, the screen glowed behind him, humming low, like a deep animal growl beneath a whisper. He turned. Static. Just static. No face. He approached, cautiously, bottle still in hand. Then, a voice. A child's voice. Garbled through the interference. "Diety." The bottle slipped from Jason's fingers and shattered. That was when the lights went out. Not just in the living room, the entire house. The rain, now hard, clattered against the windows like nails. He stood paralyzed, breathing hard. Then came the laughter, soft and scattered, like it came from several mouths at once. And none of them quite human, from down the hallway. The door to Eliza's old bedroom creaked open by itself. Jason picked up the flashlight. The hall stretched long in the dark. The walls seemed to breathe. As he moved closer to Eliza's door, the framed photographs on the walls began to change. In their wedding photo, Amelia was now looking away, her eyes scratched out. In the Christmas photo, Jason was there holding Eliza, but she had no face. In Eliza's birthday photo, the background behind the child was no longer their home, but a black pond under a purple sky. Jason's flashlight flickered. Then it died. In total darkness, he reached for the doorknob. It was ice cold, wet, and then he heard it again, a whisper. "She's still here, Daddy, but she's not alone." He opened the door. Inside, the room was flooded ankle-deep in black water. The crib was still there, even though they had moved it to storage a year ago. It rocked slowly, as if pushed by an unseen hand. Jason didn't scream. Not yet. Not until the faces began to rise beneath the water. Childlike, warped, gaping mouths, and lidless eyes, staring upward from under the surface, as if trapped in a second invisible world layered beneath their own. He slammed the door shut and backed away, slipping in the dark. At that exact moment, the TV turned off. Silence fell. The rain stopped. When Jason returned to bed, Amelia was sitting upright, pale and drenched in sweat. Her eyes were wild. She said, "We need to go back," she whispered. "Who?" "Eliza," she said, trembling. She said, "We never buried her right. She said we buried the wrong thing." Jason's heart stopped, because Eliza had died in a car crash, and there had never been a body to bury. The following morning, Jason didn't go to work. Amelia was in the kitchen, staring blankly at a piece of toast she hadn't touched. She hadn't spoken a word since the night before. Jason sat across from her, gripping his coffee cup with both hands. Finally, she said it again softly, like a prayer. She said, "We buried the wrong thing." Jason wanted to dismiss it, say it was just a nightmare. But the damp footprints in the hallway said otherwise. So did the photographs in the hall, now blank, every one of them. The glass cracked from the inside. He waited until Amelia went upstairs, then unlocked the attic. In a long, unopened box, buried beneath old Halloween decorations and plastic bins of baby clothes, was Eliza's memory box, her hospital band, a lock of her hair, a photo of her on her 3rd birthday, and taped to the inside of the lid, Jason had forgotten it entirely, was a copy of the burial certificate. Except it was wrong. The date was off. The location wasn't the church they had chosen. Instead, the form listed Lake Lanier, private family plot, sublot 3B. Jason's skin went cold. They had never chosen Lake Lanier. That night, Jason drove alone. Fog rolled across the surface of the lake like slow smoke, the water still and black as ink. The full moon was a dull bruise behind the clouds. He parked near the old boat launch and walked the shoreline, guided only by a dim flashlight. Somewhere in the dark, frogs chirped and crickets fell eerily silent. As he reached the fence line, long, rusted and falling into the water, he saw it, a half-sunken headstone, poking up from the SHALLOWS. It bore no name, just a crude carving of a child's face. And just below it, in the muck and silt, was something even worse, a door. A small iron-handled trapdoor bolted into a concrete platform beneath the waterline, half submerged. No sign, no warning, no logical reason it should be there. Jason stepped into the water. The moment his foot hit the surface, he heard them, children laughing, crying, screaming, voices warped through layers of drowning and distance. He dropped to his knees, frantically, scraping mud and moss off the hatch. The more he touched it, the warmer it felt, pulsing beneath his hands like something alive. Then it opened, not by his force but on its own. Water gushed into the hole, and with it came a smell of rot and mildew, of something buried long before it ever died. Inside was a narrow staircase, descending into darkness beneath the lake. Jason hesitated, then stepped in. He descended for what felt like hours. The walls dripped, the steps moaned, and above him, the trapdoor had vanished, replaced by the sound of waves closing over. The bottom revealed a tunnel of black brick and flooded earth. At the far end, a faint light. Jason walked. With each step, the voices grew louder. "Daddy, you forgot us. We screamed for you, but you left us down here." Jason turned a corner and froze. There, in the flickering light of a single bulb, was a nursery. Rocking chairs, a cradle, mobiles, dolls, and in the crib, wrapped in rotting lace, was something that had once been a child. He approached. His hands trembled. It was Eliza's blanket, and in the crib, beneath the rotted cloth, was a mirror. He looked into it, and saw not his reflection but hundreds of children, pale and waterlogged, pressed against the glass from the other side, screaming silently. Behind them, a shape moved, tall, shadowed, wearing a mask of carved bone. Then his flashlight flickered out, and in that second of pitch-black silence, something whispered behind his ear, "You brought the wrong body, and now we all stay." Jason turned and ran. The corridor groaned and pulsed as if it were alive, the floor squelching beneath his feet like wet flesh. Behind him, the nursery filled with laughter, not the sweet kind but high-pitched echoing mockery. Children's laughter that came from mouths with too many teeth. His flashlight sputtered back to life as he reached the stairs, but the stairs were gone. In their place was a slick downward slope, spiraling deeper into the earth lit faintly by dim bulbs that flickered like dying stars. Jason tried to scramble back the way he came, his fingers clawing at the wet stone, but a sudden rush of cold air pushed him backward. He stumbled, fell and slid down, down, until everything went black again. When he woke, Jason was in a room, concrete walls, a metal cot, chains hanging from the ceiling. In the corner, a baby monitor, an old one, yellowed with time, buzzed with soft static. He sat up slowly, his head pounding, then the static changed. Jason, it was her voice again, Eliza's. Jason scrambled to the monitor. "Daddy, why? Did you let me go? I waited. I was so cold. They said I wasn't enough, so they took the others too. Now they're part of the house. You will be too." The monitor exploded in a burst of white noise, and then the walls began to breathe, not metaphorically, literally rising and falling with long, slow inhales. The chains on the ceiling rattled, as though something massive stirred just beyond them. Jason rushed to the door and slammed his shoulder against it. Nothing. The cot behind him suddenly moved on its own, scraping loudly across the floor. Beneath it was a rusted hatch. Jason tore it open and dropped into the void below. He fell again into water, but not just any water. It was thick, heavy, and it clung to him like it didn't want him to leave. He kicked upward, fighting the weight, and broke the surface, gasping. In the dark, he was in a flooded room. The walls sloped outward like a funnel, and all around him were faces, just beneath the surface of the water. Children's faces, motionless, staring up at him with wide black eyes. They didn't blink, they didn't move, and then they smiled at once. Hands shot out from beneath the water, dozens of them, pulling him under. Jason screamed, struggling against the cold grip of tiny fingers. They didn't hurt him. Not yet. They only held him, until another voice broke through the water. Not Eliza. A new voice, deeper, crueler, female, ancient. "You stole from me." The water began to churn. "One soul is never enough. You buried your child in consecrated ground. You took her from me. You took her from me." Jason. Darkness pressed in around him. The only thing visible was a faint red glow, growing brighter by the second. "But now you've returned. You opened the door. You've heard us." From the darkness, the shape began to form, a woman, if she could be called that. Towering, rotted, her face covered by a veil of stitched human skin. Her fingers ended in hooks. Her belly bulged with movement. "We are the drowned children of the lake," she whispered. "I was their mother before the flood. I kept them fed. I kept them safe. Then you came. You poisoned them with hope. You buried her where I could not reach." The water exploded into boiling heat. Jason screamed. Then, the pressure stopped. He broke the surface again, and he was no longer underground. He was on his front lawn, soaked, shivering, mud-streaked. The sunrise was just beginning to break over the trees. His house stood quiet. Amelia was inside, asleep on the couch, the baby monitor on the table beside her off. Jason stumbled into the house, locked every door, and collapsed. But that night, when Amelia turned the monitor on again, the static returned. Jason tried to stop her, but she was already holding it close, eyes wide and wet with hope. "Eliza," she whispered. "Say something, please." And in the background, behind the sound of waves and children crying, came a single word: stay. The whispers became chants. By the fifth night, Matthew's stream had gone dark, not in the metaphorical sense, but literally. Viewers reported seeing only static, but the audio was something far worse. Deep guttural sounds like wet breathing, punctuated by distant screams layered over a cacophony of childlike giggles and distorted Latin phrases. The last visual anyone saw was Matthew's face distorted in terror, his eyes bulging, and something pulling him backward into the pulpit's shadow. Then silence. His channel was terminated hours later, not by YouTube, but something deeper. His name and all prior uploads vanished like they'd never existed. His friends received no answers. Even Avery tried contacting police anonymously, but they never found a St. Luke's church on any record, despite its presence on Google Maps days prior. That's when the murders started. It wasn't immediate. It began subtly. Viewers from the stream, especially those who commented or reacted live, started reporting night terrors. One girl in Colorado gouged her own eyes out, claiming they kept blinking at me through the screen. A man in Vermont slit his wrists and painted his walls with symbols seen in the live stream. By the end of that week, a Reddit thread titled, "Matthew's exorcism killed my brother," went viral. Avery dug deeper, contacting survivors, combing through archived stream rips and private Discord recordings. But the deeper she went, the more distorted the audio became. It wasn't just random screams anymore. It was personalized. They called her name. They mimicked her laugh. They whispered things no one else could know. Then the mirror screamed. She had been brushing her teeth late one night when her reflection moved just a second too slow. Its mouth opened in silence and then emitted a shriek so loud her neighbors called the cops. Only, when they arrived, the mirror was clean, normal, no signs of noise. But Avery couldn't stop shaking. In the mirror's fleeting scream, she had seen them, the watchers from the live stream. Those with blackened holes for eyes, their faces long and smooth like melted wax, lining the walls of that church. They weren't in the church anymore. They were watching her. She had 48 hours to act. In a panic, she reconnected with the only surviving friend from Matthew's team, Z, the tech guy. He had been the one running the lighting during the stream, but dropped out early due to a bad feeling. He was now holed up in a storage unit in Alabama, wearing headphones 24/7 and communicating only via handwritten notes. He slid one note to Avery beneath a gas station counter. "It's not an exorcism. It never was." He read the chant backward. He invited them in. Avery didn't want to believe it, but that explained everything. The live stream wasn't to expel something. It was a summoning, and the viewers, thousands of them, were unwitting links in a cursed chain. Like mirrors, reflecting mirrors, the broadcast multiplied the entity's reach. Every scream, every earbud, every eye that watched became a door, and now those doors were opening, one by one. Avery didn't sleep for 2 days. Every shadow in her apartment seemed longer, thicker, almost alive. Her phone rang with numbers that didn't exist, strings of zeros, names like Matthew is in hell, or just long rows of crosses and blood emojis. The police wouldn't help. She had tried. They watched 5 seconds of the archived footage she brought in and suddenly vomited projectile, like their stomachs were being pulled inside out. Something was breaking through. Z's last note, hastily written and trembling. "There's only one way to stop it. We have to reverse the stream broadcast. The exorcism in reverse, audio from the place it began. Audio from the place it began." At the hour 3:33 a.m. It sounded insane, but nothing else was working. People who had watched the stream were dying by the dozen. Not just dying, vanishing, often leaving behind only teeth. Whole families were wiped from existence, with only cracked screens and whispering baby monitors left behind. Avery found the original hard drive buried under a false floor in Z's storage unit, wrapped in layers of foil, soaked in salt water. The second she touched it, Her nose began to bleed. The drive was warm to warm, like it was still alive. She booked a flight to Missouri, where the coordinates from Matthew's GPS logs placed the church. It no longer appeared on any maps. The Uber driver refused to go near the location. Even locals called it the dead place, and crossed themselves when asked about it. She walked the final 3 miles alone, and there it was, St. Luke's, now blackened and broken, as if a fire had gutted it decades ago. Ivy grew over the door like stitches, trying to keep something inside. The air buzzed like an open wound, but Avery entered anyway. The altar was still there, so was the pulpit where Matthew had been taken, but now there were others. They lined the pews, shadow figures, faceless, unmoving, just watching, as if they had been waiting for her. She connected the hard drive to an old laptop, clicked play, and hit reverse. The distorted screams played backward, building into a crescendo of something not meant for human ears. Symphony of suffering played through trembling teeth. The shadows twitched. The pews groaned. The floorboards cracked, and then the watchers began to scream. Their mouths opened in wide, endless holes as the sound rebounded through the rotting chapel. Light poured from the laptop screen, not normal light, but something colder, bluer, burning through dimensions. One by one, the watchers evaporated, screaming into the void as the reversed chant sealed what had been opened. Avery's body lifted off the ground. Her spine bent backward. Her eyes rolled white dot, and then silence. She woke up hours later, collapsed on the altar. The laptop was melted. The shadows were gone. The church, somehow, peaceful. She limped outside into the rising dawn, but it wasn't. Over back in her apartment, a week later. Avery turned on the TV. The news headline chilled her blood. YouTuber discovers abandoned church. Livestream goes viral. A different influencer, different state. Same Latin chants, same altar, same watchers. The screen flickered. Then a black-eyed child stared into the camera and whispered, "Let us in, Bert. Let us in."